Hey, what's up, guys? Tyler Jones. Um, just want to talk to you about something that happened this week at the South Carolina legislature that should have, I believe, everybody outraged. Something that was rammed down people's throats with little to no debate that could ultimately cost lives here in South Carolina. Now, the press is covering it to some extent, but this is an issue that I believe should be in the front of every newspaper, leading every newscast, and something that any politically minded voter should be talking about and outraged about, like I said. And that, of course, is the passage this week in the South Carolina House of Representatives of what some call constitutional carry. Others call it open carry. I call it permitless carry because that's what it is. It allows people to carry a weapon, carry a firearm openly in public on their side so that everybody can see it without having to have a permit. And why do you have to have a permit right now for a concealed weapons permit, concealed weapons carry? Because you have to take a course. You have to learn about your weapon. You have to take safety precautions. You have to learn what it means, the responsibilities of carrying a weapon. That's out the window if this House bill passes the Senate and the governor signs it. And that's what happened on Wednesday when the Republican controlled House not only passed this bill, which is bad enough. And by the way, I got to give a lot of credit to 7 Republican House members who voted against it. And that's how bad this was. That 7 Republicans voted against the gun bill. That should tell you just how bad this thing was. But it's not just bad enough that the bill passed, it's the way that it passed. Let me tell you what happened. At the end of last week, the Republican controlled House, the leadership, invoked what's called cloture when they brought this bill up. Basically, they said, all right, the speaker reads the bill. It says, all right, we're at H, yada, yada, yada. And someone made a motion to invoke cloture. What does invoke cloture mean? That means it limits the amount of debate you can have on a bill. It means you can't file any additional amendments. Whatever amendments are already on the desk, that's it. And it limits the debate each amendment can have to 10 minutes. So a bill that changes gun laws so drastically in South Carolina so that someone can carry a weapon openly on their side, out in public, without any kind of training, without a permit, was debated for a couple hours. When the bill came up on Wednesday, cloture was already invoked, and the debate lasted just a short time. I worked at the State House for, I guess, 9 years. And, cloture was invoked several times. It's still very rare. When I first got to the legislature in '09, it was almost unheard of because it's disrespectful. You're telling the other side, we don't really care what you think. We're going to limit the amount of debate we can have on the bill because we know best. So it was already very rare. But I have never, ever seen or heard of cloture being invoked before debate had even begun about the bill. It's crazy. And to make matters worse, there's one opportunity for the public to give their input on a piece of legislation at the State House, and that's in the subcommittee process. That's when people can come and testify for or against a bill, give their reasons in front of the subcommittee. Well, when this bill was introduced, it was done at the very last minute without much public notice or any public notice. Nobody knew it was happening. And so, of course, no one was there to testify for or against the bill, and they just passed it. And then it got to judiciary, and then it comes down to party line votes. Republicans voted for it, Democrats voted against it. It got to the floor, and before we even had, and I say we, people who may have been against this bill, had an opportunity to debate the merits of the bill, cloture was invoked, and that was it. So you have a bill that now allows people to carry openly without having to go through any training or have a permit. To make matters even worse, what this means, because South Carolina has still not closed the Charleston loophole, and a little bit of background about that, in South Carolina, if you go and buy a gun, they do a background check, and if the background check is not back within 3 days, the gun shop can just sell it to you. And proponents of closing the so-called Charleston loophole would simply say, you can't get the gun till the background check is completed. Real radical idea. And of course, it's called the Charleston loophole because that is how Dylann Roof obtained a weapon. He had a complicated legal history. It took a little bit longer to determine whether he was legally qualified to have a gun. It was longer than 3 days. They sold him the gun. And of course, we know what happened. There was an amendment put up by Representative Lori Funderburk yesterday to close the Charleston loophole and say, look, if we're going to do open carry, let's at least make sure the people who are going to be buying these guns pass a background check. That was voted down. So now you have a world where as long as you're old enough to possess a weapon, you can go buy a gun. You can essentially not have to pass a background check if it lasts longer than 3 days. You can carry it openly, and you don't have to have any kind of training to know how to use that weapon. That's what happened on Wednesday. It's a travesty. It is a sad day and a sad time in South Carolina when something this meaningful, this important, can be pushed through the way it was. Cloture was invoked. No one was alerted at the subcommittee level for people to come in and testify. And it was rammed through like it was no big deal. The last thing I'll say about this is if you needed another reason to end the practice of gerrymandering in South Carolina, this is a perfect example. And you're asking, what does this have to do with gerrymandering? Well, the reason it passed is because Republicans in the House, who I know many of them, I know for a fact many of them thought this bill was nuts. They felt like they had to vote for it or else they might lose a primary and be branded anti-gun. Why? Because they don't have to worry about a general election. They just have to worry about a primary because of the practice of gerrymandering. Their district has been gerrymandered to the point where a Democrat can't win their district, so they've got to be the most conservative person in their district running for that seat. And if you vote against the gun bill for the rest of your career, you're anti-gun. Everybody should be talking about this. Everybody should be talking about this bill, the process, the power that was used to ram it down our throats. And anybody who opposes this bill like me, you need to contact your senator and let them know that this is unacceptable. This is just too important to be pushed through as quickly as it was in the House. But more importantly, it's unnecessary, it's dangerous, and we've got bigger fish to fry here in South Carolina. Our roads, our schools, the pension fund, ethics. We got plenty of work to do, and this bill is only going to make things worse. So spread the word, and let's get this thing killed. Thanks.